Hey folks, welcome back. So yesterday we had snow over the weekend. So yesterday I shoveled around all my outbuildings, all my paths to my compost piles. I shoveled the deck off, shoveled everything that needed to be shoveled, banked everything that I could bank because we just don't have enough snow to bank pretty high. Now, my house, I like to bank around my house. My house is elevated so I could get in and out of the crawl space a little bit easier. So I don't have to, what do they call that? Belly crawl, army crawl. No. So when the house was being built, I said, listen, I want it up a little bit higher off the ground. So, which means this time of year when I want to bank my house, it's got to have quite a bit of snow, right? So there's always that. For those of you who live in cold climates, you already know what you can and can't do. Snow is a pretty good insulator. Now, for those people who like to ice fish and do some beaver trapping up here in the colder climates, or in the colder climates period, they like to see significant cold, so it'll form ice and it'll form hard ice, which is safer to walk on, right? But throughout the years, the last several years, the weather is warming up. So we get warm days, a few cold days, but more warm days for this time of year. And it either rains or it snows. So you have a thin coating of ice, maybe an inch of ice, and then it snows. And then even if we get a real long, prolonged cold snap, if you've got 8 inches of ice, if you've got 8 inches of snow on top of that 1 inch of ice, it's not going to allow that ice to freeze. So it makes the ice, it makes the ice very unsafe. It gives a false sense of security. So again, this year, it's been too warm to form ice. So every year, folks, people go ice fishing. People go ice fishing and they fall through the ice and they die, right? So there's a lot of false insecurities in winter just by itself. So it makes it very, very dangerous, right? I cleaned everything that needs to be cleaned off. I banked everything that I thought needed to be banked with as little snow as we've got. And again, there's 2 inches of rain. It's supposed to be 56 degrees, folks. That's going to be very warm. It's going to melt and pack what snow we do have, and anything underneath it, like ice we've got ice underneath this snow, and that's just gonna make more ice. So you gotta have the cleats. You've got to be able to know how to walk in cleats, and also those tend to have a false sense of security when you're walking because you still got to go slow, right? And if you have real hard ice, the cleats don't tend to grip as much as you want. You can still skid on really hard ice with cleats on. So a lot of salt here. And I know, folks, calcium chloride isn't the best earth-friendly stuff. But it's what works here, because calcium chloride will still melt ice at minus 25 degrees. So 25 below zero, it's still working. Rock salt, not so much. It has a cutoff point, right? So, and a lot of times the sun has to be shining on where it is. And then a lot of people up here, I like to use sand I've got a pile of sand that has been covered with a dark tarp. So when the sun shines on it, it keeps that sand thawed. So if I need to sand my driveway, I can definitely do that. If I need to sand my walkways, I can definitely do that as well. I have a full bucket of ashes, wood ash, that I like to spread out in the driveway, not around where I walk around the house, because I don't want to track that in. I don't even want to track it up onto my deck or my steps or anything, because it's pretty hard to keep that from coming in the house, coming and going. So I like to spread the ashes out on the main, out on the camp road. So if somebody pulls in and they have to, if they go up the road, they have a hard time getting going from backing out of my driveway. So I like to keep that ashed up pretty good. The end of my driveway, the last half of my driveway toward the camp road, I'll spread ash. But anywhere that I'm walking on a regular basis, I'll just use sand. So any kind of ice melt is a must in the wintertime. A shovel is a must in the wintertime. Ice chisel is also very, very good to have in the wintertime. Sand, salt of some sort, wood ash, all that makes a really good non-slippery surface, along with your due diligence with cleats on, right? So, and every season is different. So you accumulate all that stuff for winter, and then in the spring is a totally different attire, totally different setup. The summers are pretty basic here. We have a very short summer up here. We have a very long winter, folks. And the fall is generally getting ready for winter. Winter is getting ready for spring and upkeep and maintenance. Spring is getting ready for summer. Summer is getting ready for fall. So you're living in the season, but you're also preparing ahead of time for the next season, right? So that's why it's important to think ahead. Get everything you need. I've always got more sand than I use, which I'm not complaining about. I've always got more calcium chloride than I need. You never know when you're not going to be able to get it. You never know when sand is not available. Now, we've got a gravel pit, right? There's a lot of sand, there's a lot of gravel, there's a lot of rocks in there. But you've got to think ahead. If you want sand for the winter, you've got to think ahead and get that in the summertime, allow it to dry, right? It's just preparing. You've got to think ahead. You've just got to think ahead, folks. If you wait till the last second to get stuff done, the sand is already frozen in the pit, right? You haven't saved up any ashes. So and wet ash, you don't use wet ash. You got to use ash that hasn't been that hasn't gotten wet. Okay, so it's just preparing. I don't know how many shovels I've got here, folks. You need extra shovels. You never know. You never know when a shovel handle's gonna break. So preparing is key. Not preparing could get you in a whole lot of trouble, folks. Those people that don't think ahead are the ones that are either extremely lucky that nothing happens to them, or they find themselves woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Now, when it first started getting cold, late summer, I have a travel bag that I carry. I travel on some really bad roads very late at night and very early in the morning. So the roads are horrible, usually in the wintertime. If there's an accident and I have to be stopped on the interstate and wait for the accident to be cleared up, which has happened before, I want to make sure I have plenty of gas in my vehicle. I want to make sure I have a bottle of water in my vehicle. I've got a blanket, I've got some hand warmers, I've got an extra pair of winter boots, I've got all kinds of stuff. If I end up leaving the road, Now, I'll tell you a real short story. So, two ladies that I used to work for, they used to work for the as EMTs, and they had to go out into a blizzard. They left the road, folks. They couldn't tell where the road was. They went out over an embankment, and we had so much snow, folks, that the vehicle could not be seen. The vehicle couldn't be seen. They could not get out of their vehicle because they just plowed in, and they couldn't open their vehicle doors. None of them. And then it snowed so much that it kind of encased them. They had water, they had blankets, they had everything that they needed until they were found, right? When you don't show up to where you're supposed to be, especially in an emergency, well, now all of a sudden they're looking for you, right? So they did end up finding them, but they spent the night in that vehicle, but they were plenty warm. Now, if you are buried in snow, if you left the road and you're buried in snow, you cannot leave your vehicle running to stay warm, because if that snow has plugged or up around your exhaust system, that is not good. That's going to come into the vehicle, and that will kill you. So sometimes if you leave the road, you cannot continue to run your vehicle, or that will kill you faster, right? So there's a lot to be mindful of. There's just a lot to prepare for. And if you're thinking ahead, preparing, making a list, then you should fare better than most, really. So it is getting quite cool out. It is very cloudy. The wind is up a little bit, but the coldness is one it's like a damp cold. So you can tell that a storm is definitely moving in. So unless I find a place to stay high and dry tomorrow, I will not be making a video. So I hope you all are well. For those of you in cold country, please make sure you prepare, okay? Even if it's that 1 or 2% chance that that'll ever happen, plan for that anyway, because if that ever does happen, then you've got yourself covered, right? All right. You all be good. Bye-bye.